Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the metaverse. Welcome to another episode of the Metaverse Nomads. I'm Jesse, or Whitticus, and I'm joined by my cohorts, my partners in crime here, Fancy Hat, Ravis, and Andrew. And Banjo will be joining us. He's sorting out a couple of internet technical issues. But yeah, this is we're here to kind of do a number of things. There's been a couple of updates in the industry on some of the blockchain games that we follow. So we'll start off with that. Then we're going to dive into Star Atlas, and it's kind of the calm before the storm. But we do have a couple of blog posts that gave us some updates about what to expect this week, and then another one that touched on land and DAOs and governance. So we'll be jumping into that. And of course, we invite all of you that are watching us live to leave some comments, and so we can bring those on. So we're going to do a bit of theory crafting today, again, being that we have a little bit of a calm before the upcoming storm. And with that, who has got content first that they want to touch on? Some of the games they're following. Fancy Hat?
I believe it's Ray's turn first normally.
Sure. Got those photos, Fancy?
Yeah, I just finished doing them.
So yeah, I could start with the Axie Infinity's Twitter post of the developer chat that's taking place. And this is promising, as there was a lot of talk and criticism on how the largest game in the NFT gaming space isn't giving enough context when it comes to the art or specific updates that took place before. More communication between the growing player base and what they're doing on the project. And excuse the sirens.
They found you, Ray.
Okay over there. I hope everything's all right. Okay, but nevertheless, there's going to be one of on Monday, October 4th at 2 p.m. CEST. We're going to have on Twitch the developer chat, which is going to be pretty cool. So you just chime in, because we recently had staking for Access token released with an airdrop that was given to at least 10,000. I think it was 10,000 to be exact. And if you were here last October before the 26th, there was a snapshot that was taken, and congratulations if you got that. It's worth a good penny in US dollars. But the incentives for staking are over 200% at this time. There's $11 billion worth, 11 billion access worth. Sorry, 11 million access worth close to $2 billion. So last I checked. So it's a pretty good APR there. And the continued growth of the ecosystem is taking place. And if we could, there was an event that took place in New York City that I had the pleasure to attend. And I happened to have met Jihos and Bryson, which is more or less the face. If we could switch to that photo, which was pretty cool. And so yeah, that's me. And we were there, and it was a nice time from 4 to 7 p.m. New York City, and there was a lot of conversation. No leaks per se, but the conversation of the decks came up pretty often by people who were asking questions. And that's also going to come soon with the flurry of updates and releases that they talked about in their last developer update just last month. And so that was cool. And then there was a great friend that I've met in person, named Person, and he did a shout out, as I did with everyone that mingled that night. We could pull up that photo. So just to show a little bit of what the place was looking like. Fancy it whenever you read it. If that
I
one's
think
loaded up.
I think he was dropped.
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh, there he
There he
is.
goes.
yeah, I've
There
got
you
the graph one ready for you. I'm going to pull
Okay.
the other one up now. So.
Sure. So you could throw the graph up there, and it's just for context of what's happening as far as the growth of Axie Infinity compared to the traditional, gaming companies that are there. On an Ethereum-based video game, Axie Infinity ranks among the top 5 video game organizations in the world by market cap, whether they're acknowledged as that or not, an official gaming, company, which the whole space will soon understand and eventually build on top of as well. So it's just a matter of time. And with all these new releases coming out, just, there's a lot of promise for the whole space in general, for companies to do well and continue growing, and for us as investors and players to benefit from as well. But just to end off the news, because that was pretty much it. Besides the DEX, which is coming, there's no set date on that. But with that, there's going to be liquidity providing for a smaller Potion and Axis, which will be a lucrative endeavor if you take part in it. And yeah, just to wrap it up, that was pretty much it. And then that photo of us all hanging out. Jihos's wife is there on the bottom right. Person is the guy with the peace sign on the bottom right, all the way on the left. And great dude, man. Phenomenal people, lots of talent and passion in the space. Relatively small showing. Less than 100 people compared to how many people are actually playing the game. And yeah, definitely a pleasure to finally get out there and meet people and just continue axing hard, as they say. So on to the next one, guys. Thanks.
Wow, that's amazing. They have grown in leaps, even just recently. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Thinking halfway to like Blizzard numbers.
Yeah, I was surprised that Roblox was up there, like even higher than or close to getting Blizzard. But yeah, I know it's quite popular, but that's a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
Yep.
So on the Alluvium side this week, it's been a bit quiet, but they have been doing a lot of solid stuff again. Flash pool giveaways, loads of art released, and I'll get onto that now. This is one of the first pictures we've seen of the human male, I believe. It looks quite cool with the robot on his back, and yeah.
That especially looked like a Samus Aran.
Yeah, I really like how they're releasing like a tiny bit of lore here and there. Like we're able to they crash landed on a planet and they're stuck there with all these beasts and yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Next one. So there is a volume on this one.
Everybody's going to the party, have a real good time.
Jamming. You know what's amazing? I mean, Alluvium has this massive, quiet growth for a project that has been pushed out a ways. I mean, their Discord is just growing in leaps and bounds from 116,000 2 weeks ago to now. I think they're over 130,000. Just massive growth.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how the project has grown since its inception. This isn't a gossip channel, but I couldn't help but notice on Twitter for a brief moment just this morning. We're not oblivious to the controversies that are happening between Axie Infinity and Alluvium amongst the brothers, and then just what they think about Axie as a project. Not every project is going to have the best art that you like or the best game genre, but it's funny. And I'm agnostic because as an investor, I like all games, right? And I don't have anything against the brothers, but it doesn't help the image, right? And I personally get turned off when just anyone in general acts in a way that's kind of dogmatic and not understanding in the moment. So if you're a loose cannon, as he said himself, Karen, one of the brothers, talking negative about Axie Infinity as if it's not gonna make it, but then again, there's no game created already to be played other than staking, which is the only incentive really, and then the speculation of the project. Um, it's just an interesting dynamic between the two projects and the space as a whole to see these types of things happen.
It seems to just kind of be their style in general. Meaning, like I don't know if it's just done to poke fun or just to kind of make it like a friendly competition out there. Because you saw we played that video a while back of them throwing some shade on Star Atlas. I think so. It's probably just their kind of style. At the end of the day, with so few of companies actually at the development forefront in the blockchain gaming space, I think it's just going to push them all to develop and become stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we also did get this interesting video right here. I do really like when they show off this type of stuff. It is quite rough, but the gameplay surrounding this type of landscape is interesting. Yeah, it kind of makes me think of like either like climbing, jumping, jetpacks, something like that, because they continuously show this like ridiculous landscape to traverse. And yeah,
well, I didn't get the scale of what we were looking at until it zoomed in and I saw that human there.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild.
Yeah, how do you get up there? That's what I want to know. And if you imagine that with like the texture like this over it, would be quite cool. There is a human to scale, if you can see that there. But yeah. So that's it from Illuvium this week.
As I see game content and as we see things like the Pierce X4, for Star Atlas, and with these AAA games that are coming out with this Unreal Engine content, the question becomes, is that nanite technology progressed so far that the average person is just going to be able to play and enjoy themselves with enough frame rate to not have to go out and just buy this beast of a gaming box. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out amongst the average user, not the hardcore gamer, because, in this blockchain gaming space where it's play to earn, we want as many people playing as possible. So hopefully that's something that these graphics allow for. But man, they're pretty spectacular when you see them.
Oh, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
All right. Does that cover news? We got anything else here with news?
I have just a little bit of on the gala end if you guys have some time.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely.
So just a couple things. The Frank Miller NFT went out. I didn't participate because it was already up at, I believe, 20,000. Like the first 30 minutes, it was like, forget it. I'm not gonna look into that. There's no point. Then the other news is Townstar. That's what I want to say. So on the 5th, so the next week's game starting on the 5th at 9 a.m. This Pacific time frame. That's when they said they're going to start the early beta for Towncoin. So if you own any NFTs, like stands, I believe there's something special with the express truck, but I think I misread that. But if you have any NFTs, the rarer it is, the more town coins you're going to get. And then same thing with the Vox. If you have a Vox and you place it in your town, it will produce coins. There's a rarity chart, and then depending on the rarity is how many coins it's going to produce. The lowest amount is around 30, the low 30s, with the highest producing about 3,000 coin per day. There's also going to be daily challenges. So if you do the daily challenge, you should get an additional boost of coins. And from what I've heard, there is a limit cap, so it should help increase the price a little bit. But this coin isn't going to be like the Gala coin or the Gala utility token, where it's just going to go, or it's going to go to the moon. It's just more for utility for Townstar only. And I don't know if they're going to have an on-ramp to go from Townstar, so the coin, to go to Gala. They did say that like months ago that it was going to happen, but we don't know when it's going to happen. So, but for now, this if you like to play Townstar, this is a great way to start accumulating the Townstar coin. There it is. And also, one other thing I really want to note: like I know I said it was for the Townstar specific NFTs, like the wheat stands. The rarer the NFT, the more coins it's going to produce. We don't know how much it's going to be. At least I don't know yet. And then, so I'll give you an example. If you buy a wheat stand from the Gala market that's currently out, those aren't as rare as the buy trues because there aren't nearly as many buy trues. And then if you have a regular buy true wheat stand, it doesn't produce as much as a legendary buy true wheat stand. So you can go from there. That's about it.
Interesting. It looks like their site had a makeover this past week or so as well. It seems like now when you log in, for those of you that are node owners, you have stuff that sits in a chest. So you have different views of actually how you see your Gala before it actually becomes minted. Now they also have this other meter up in the top corner, which is basically your level based on the NFTs you have in your wallet that are capable of play to earn. At least that's my understanding of it. Oh, and also speaking of Gala nodes, it seems like after that big push for sales, that node distribution has climbed back up a little bit. It dipped down into the 300s, and now it's pushed back up over 400 a bit. While Gala itself seems to be holding around 10 cents.
Oh, two other pieces of news about Gala. So I believe the nodes are officially moved now from 100. Every 100 sold, it goes up 100. Is now officially been changed to every 100 nodes sold is $500, with the final node being at, I think it was 100,000 for the final node. So that's one hell of an not investment.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't like about that, and I didn't think about this at the start, was we're told that once all of the nodes have been sold, then the nodes become NFTs. So now if we have to wait, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if that is actually what we have to wait for until they actually make the nodes NFTs, then you're essentially waiting till that last one sells for $100,000 before you can actually choose to sell your node if you want to. Right. So that did change versus what was it before? It was like 25,000 or 50,000. Was it half that?
No, I think it was always they have to sell them all.
No, I was saying what the last node would cost.
Oh, I think it was like 30,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
I can be off because I don't own a node myself. I got in too late, or when I got in, I could have potentially bought one. I just didn't really understand nodes. I kind of beat myself up about that now.
So essentially what happened there, which it's the reason I find it kind of strange, is because this just changed what node owners are able to do with their nodes, because now it pushed out how long it's going to be until it becomes an NFT. And so it occurs to me that is something that the node owners probably should have voted on. But here we are. Just something I didn't even think about when I first heard about the price increases. But well.
Yep.
Anything else in Gala?
There's one more piece I wanted to say, but I cannot remember it off the top of my head. I got distracted. But that's fine. It's fine. You can keep going.
With the chicken tanks, they've got a charity drop, a new skin. They've got some stuff like that going on. I don't know if any of that.
Yeah, the pink skin, I believe, for breast cancer awareness month or something like that.
Yeah. It's a pink skin, and then it drops the little pink ribbon right above it. I don't know if you'll see it in game, but you'll see a pink skin in game if you buy it.
Do you have any idea how close they are to pushing that game out?
So the actual creator of Spider Tanks said they were shooting for this quarter, actually. So I would assume, because they did a closed beta. I don't know if they're still doing it. I think it's done now, but they did a 2-week closed beta. It was actually a lot smoother than the last time I played it. You were able to play with all the NFTs. You were able to play with all of the tanks. You just couldn't play with any of the exclusive tanks if you didn't buy them. But it was pretty smooth, and I wouldn't be surprised if it came out sometime in December. probably near Christmas time, like 2 to 3 weeks, second or third week of December. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I happened to have got it in once during the release of playing, and I played, and I could see how it could get addicting. But the incentives need to be there for me personally to invest my time when it comes to the whole ecosystem as a whole. But-
Yeah, I did play during that initial first beta and I enjoyed it. It's not really like my type of game playing, but one of the things I did try with, which is pretty cool, is I do have a remote, controller. So had that connected to my computer so I could actually play rather than trying to use the keyboard and mouse stuff around. So that actually made gameplay a lot better, I think. But Fancy Hat was still kicking my butt the whole time, so that didn't help me, obviously. All right, so that wraps up news around the industry. That brings us to Star Atlas, and man, we got a couple bombs dropped on us here news-wise, and it's been the calm before the storm. Up until we saw these recent announcements, I just kind of figured that they were pushing things back. We probably weren't going to get any big news or anything for at least maybe to the end of this month. But man, they jumped in, and this week, away we go, kicking things off day after tomorrow on Tuesday. So let me bring up a picture here. Here's basically the first one that came out 2 days ago, saying High Octane October, which is actually fitting for October in the crypto space, generally speaking. Star Atlas set to release player factions, new trailer and ships. So you can see down there, there's basically 3 key events here. On Tuesday, day after tomorrow, the doors open to the minigame. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then Wednesday, October 6th, is going to be the full-length game trailer. And then Thursday is going to be a ship drop. So just taking a closer look at each of these individually. The first one, doors to the minigame open. So, this is when they say doors open, this is essentially we're not jumping in and playing the game. However, if as it's already been stated, the game is already afoot. So this is just another extension of the strategy for leading up to gameplay when the mini game is available to play. This is going to be an opportunity to set up your profile, strategize, organize, and prepare for future release by selecting your faction. So this is a big one, faction selection. Whichever guild you're associated with, if you happen to be in our guild, Rome, we have chosen ONI as our faction, so that would be the faction you're selecting. It also says here that it will allow guilds to begin positioning themselves to gain competitive advantages based on their goals. So, it's been interesting all up to this point when it comes to looking at the gameplay and when people are, setting up alliances with other guilds and trying to plan and strategize. It's like we really don't know what we're planning and strategizing for. Beyond a thorough read of the economic paper, beyond a thorough read of the white paper, it just leaves a lot of questions, which is why on this show we've done a whole lot of theory crafting, which is a bit of what we'll be doing here today as well. And it's also going to give us an introduction to the faction leaderboards. So before I jump on to the next thing that's going to happen on Wednesday, just what are you guys' thoughts about, what are your expectations, I guess, of what you might think the process will be like? You think it's just going to be a login screen where you connect your wallet and then you go through a sign-up process? If a person wants to, can they go through that process with multiple wallets? If they wanted to have multiple accounts, is that frowned upon? Like, what are you guys' thoughts about what we might expect?
Well, with the little amount of information we've got so far, we're all kind of going in blind. But I assume we're going to pick a name. We're going to be able to create a guild, join a guild, and that might be about it for a couple weeks. But anything other than that would be a win in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're gonna on the website. They're gonna have a more or less, or unless it's gonna be a different website altogether, but it should be integrated on the website. I think it's gonna be a pretty simple, straightforward type of selection process. Nothing too overly complicated, and hopefully that's the way it goes. So everyone could seamlessly just choose and then keep planning and moving on with what they plan on doing, as whether it's a guild or an individual.
Yeah. So that's a great question, Artie, and it is why did we choose ONI? And there's a number of reasons for it. And there's a lot of layers to how we came to this decision. One part of it was the consoles, kind of giving some thought to our approach to the game, and we like the idea of stealth and scanning distance. Even over firepower and travel distance, or over hull strength and maneuverability, which is Ooster. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is that we did a vote within the guild for all the guild members at the time, and ONI came up there as well. And then there's a third one, which is discussions with other guilds, and looking to see where we could position ourselves strategically. And we are actually probably the first significant guild within Star Atlas to make a declaration. Even though, through talks with other guilds, we at least had an idea of what direction they were leaning. So there was a number of factors that went into our choice for ONI. And also with that, I mean, again, it's kind of race independent. So you could choose to be Ooster and still have ONI as a faction. But yeah, so I hope that answers your question. And anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, one reason I like ONI is I think the advanced scanning will be really beneficial just in general. There seems a lot of circumstances where you can use scanning. When you see someone else out in space, you can identify them quicker, run or fight, or you could identify materials or resources just flying past. Yeah, it just seems... utility-wise, it seems very underrated when given the choice between strength, agility, and stealth. Yeah.
I wonder if race selection is going to be a part of this process. And also, you mentioned name. I think they're doing. I mean, I don't know if we choose a name and that's the name that's associated with the leaderboard this round, because we also know that at some point in the future, there's going to be auctions for names within Star Atlas. So I'm curious to know if we just pick a temporary name or if you choose to never, because it is an option. You don't have to get an actual name through the auction later. That's an optional thing. So perhaps we do pick just a base name now, and then later, if we want to actually change that to a name that we own within the metaverse of Star Atlas. But yeah, we're just, Banjo, as you're rejoining us here, we're just kind of talking about what we might expect come registration time on Tuesday morning.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, finally! What a headache that was. I think this registration is really going to kind of take all the mystery out of what's going on between the guilds, right? So if we start to see some guild information, we're going to start to see who's been telling the truth and who hasn't been telling the truth. And I think you're going to start to see the strategy in their Medium article. They said the strategy is going to start playing. And I think behind the scenes, a lot of guilds have been doing their own internal strategy, but now we have a better understanding of, who's where. Not only faction-wise, are they really being honest about what they said they were going to pick, but also from the asset perspective, are we going to see some surprises?
Yeah, I think I would be surprised if we saw some surprises. I think that it's with the guilds that are out there. It's kind of for a lot of them, it's a game of herding cats. And so to make a pivot at the last minute, hey everybody, we're going to this faction. I don't really know of any large guilds anyway that have that capacity to do a last minute and get everyone on board. So, but I would be surprised by a surprise like that.
Yeah, it definitely does seem a choice for smaller guilds, being able to wait it out if that is an option, because we don't know how long this registration is going to be open for. Some people, they could just sit back, watch the leaderboards, and look for an opportunity.
Well, from a race perspective, what are you guys going to pick? I mean, that's if this is what we're doing this week.
Well, that's a funny thing, because we know that even within the races, there's different subsets of race. And so that is still a mystery. I mean, even like the image that we saw, this one here, let me pull that up. Yeah, this one right here, it's like we got a side profile. We're still like, can we get a little bit more info? Like, can we see the lineup? We can see, like, when you go to the Star Atlas website, how you've got the three of them stacked there. But it's my understanding there's going to be even variations of them. And like, what are some of the? Are there more buffs and benefits and debuffs? Are there more considerations? And I don't want to, have to choose that in that exact moment. Or maybe you can just sit on that screen forever. I don't know about you guys, but if you ever played like, Baldur's Gate or some of the other ones where, man, you're spending like an hour in the character creation process. Like, man, what do I want to choose? And so it's probably going to be a lot of that. But hopefully, I was kind of hoping we would get some more lore and storyline character information on the various races going into it.
Yeah,
I'm thinking. Go ahead, man.
Thanks, man. One of the things that we haven't seen any information on is if the races will have varied stats or if there'll be different. Most MMOs have stats like strength, wisdom, constitution, whatever. We haven't seen anything that relates to that. So I'm curious if it's just going to be what you look like and there's nothing else. That will feel kind of flat to me personally.
Yeah.
Because I want to see variation within the character and the races, like you were saying. And I think with the ONI, I'm hoping that there's multiple races that you can pick from. I mean, a few of us have different ideas on what we want to play, and some people might want to play a light alien, and some people might want to play what we just saw on that screen. And when we're done with this part of the conversation, I would like to talk about that picture because there's some awesome stuff there.
Sure. I just wanted on that note for the photo as well, and what we were just mentioning about the avatar creation. As Michael Wagner mentions, and as we know, the metaverse, you'll be living in it. So I don't doubt that there's going to be a lot of time spent, and maybe on the onset of faction selection or soon after, there would be a whole website or section of the website dedicated to editing and crafting or creating your character in a way that's going to appeal to you. So I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of different styles, and if not, to keep it simple, they might just have many races that we're just not aware of yet because they want to maybe release it in a specific order. So we might be not understanding maybe why it hasn't come out yet, but they might have a plan, and it's going to be essential to the game and the growth of it and everyone's interest of it. So I look forward to the different styles and the different races myself.
Well, I think, Apex brings up a good point, is that may not matter during the mini game. However, it will matter after, right? So if we're having to pick now for something that we won't see stats on until 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 5 months from now, many of us may have wished that we picked a different choice once we finally see those stats. That's why I'd rather have at least some information up front to make a more informed decision.
Yeah, and one thing I did bring up earlier is, where is it? This comment that you need to know who operates the ships you buy, because I know a lot of people just bought what they thought was cool, what they thought would suit them, and now they would ideally pick something that helps with that, because we know that certain races are going to be better with their own ships. So that information is quite crucial, I would say.
Well, Wagner did talk about that. So the best we know now, based on what Wagner shared in his chat, is that the ships are agnostic. Like, you don't have to have an ONI race with an ONI ship. However, the crew members and their ability to influence the tech on the ship, whether it's radars or weapon systems, at least up front, will have a competitive advantage over a race that isn't aligned with that tech. So I think we're more focused on the crew and the tech versus the actual ships at this time.
Yeah, I kind of just getting a feel for what the experience might be. I think I mentioned this last week, but I've been playing a bit of O-Game. And, O-Game, being that there's really nothing graphical on the surface, it's basically rolls of the dice and timers sitting beneath. And I'm assuming that that's going to be quite a bit like what we're going to be experiencing in the early part of the game. Speaking of ships, one of the things I think was clarified is at some point I thought we had heard somewhere that there was going to be like a limitation on 5 ships within a fleet, but then that was kind of squashed and that there isn't a limit. Is that accurate? Did you guys hear that?
Yes. No limit. Michael specifically said there will be no limit to your fleet. It might change, obviously, as the game develops, but as of right now, he said he can confirm that there will be no fleet limit. One person can fly an entire fleet if they wanted to.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm also curious to know, like, resource wise. So, I mean, that's great. So let's say that you decide that you want to go out and explore, and you're bringing your entire fleet with you. Is the downside to that, that you're going to take on extra maintenance costs, extra fueling, some means that's probably going to discourage you from just wanting to wantonly use your ships just to take them anywhere. Yeah.
Ned brought up a good comment. He said, but we can just transfer assets to a new account with a different race later on. And I think that some people have that as their goal. However, there are things that are tied to your account that will not trade from your account. So your stats as a pilot or your stats as an avatar or character, if I'm not mistaken, are locked to the wallet. So you won't be able to, you can transfer the ships to a different wallet, sure, but you'll have to start over with the race as we understand it right now.
Well, you can transfer them, but that doesn't mean they automatically ship to that new faction.
Right. That was explicitly explained by Wagner himself, that if you create another account, as people or maybe other guilds might have been thinking, like, hey, we can just have our guild in every faction, break up a guild maybe into different factions, and then send ships that are going to be needed in that faction for whoever needs them. But what happens is when you do that, and you send that ship to another wallet, you have to physically in-game have to go get that ship that you transferred into the wallet, and then bring it all the way to that other faction's territory or region. So you can't really escape or maneuver the system or hack the system in a way where you're gonna benefit more so than someone else when it comes to that.
And so for those,
go ahead, Jesse.
I was going to say, for those that did not hear that or read how that's done, essentially all the NFTs, the in-game assets, will have an XY coordinate. So if you do trade it to someone and it's in the ONI faction in the far reaches, and that person and the other wallet happens to be far out in mud, you got to figure out how to transport those goods in that ship from one location to the other. Just moving it to a wallet does not change its location.
In regards to the picture, though, this is the probably the most finely detailed picture we've seen of in-game assets. We've seen some humans, we've seen some stuff, but this one really knocked my socks off when I saw it. If this is the quality of the in-game assets as we play it at the AAA version of the game, this is going to be one of the top games at all times. I mean, the detail on the weapon, as somebody who's into firearms, the detail on the weapon is spot on. I mean, it's hard to see here, but when you get close, you see that they got the shine right on the barrel. The scope looks spot on. They put the stress and the grip tape on the buttstock. And just the character itself with the textures and the colors. This is going to be like a cosplayer's dream. Some of the things that they're building here. But I'm really excited to see what they do, and I can't wait to see more races. This just makes me want to say, give me more, give me more. And for those of you who don't know, we are being exposed to additional details and art in the Foundation Discord, which you only have to server boost to get into. So if you want to see information and pictures ahead of time, join the server boost on the Star Atlas Discord Foundation room. You have to get for a boot. Shit, I can't talk. A booster.
Server booster.
Thanks, man. Jeez.
Yeah. And one thing is, we did get the name of this alien as well. It's called a Myree's Bounty Hunter. It does look quite bounty hunter-ish.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's like a grenade, like the red dot thing on her back. But yeah, like when I first looked at this, I didn't even realize that you could see the face. I thought it was like looking away because the eye's a bit weird, at least at first glance, but it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the detail on it, the photo, if you go to the Medium blog post and you either save that image or, scale it, the detail is pretty impressive because once you shared that with me, I zoomed in to look at that eye. And then even above the eye, you can see these round patterns. They almost look like geometric shapes. But yeah, just epic detail in this.
The fact that they call it a bounty hunter is interesting as well too. So are we going to see different clothing or different looks for different professions? I mean, as somebody who wants to get into the bounty hunting class and get a ship, that this just intrigues me even more. What here is bounty hunting, or is she just a person that they're saying this is what a bounty hunter might look like?
I think it's just a bounty hunter. It does look. I do like the overall picture. Like it does look like she's scouting down someone and perhaps air support. I do have a sneaky belief that is the fighter that will go on sale this week. We do not know which one specifically, but it's quite blurry in the background. It'd be quite easy to play something like that.
Wouldn't that be a nice soft leak for that to be the ship that they announce and sell? I mean, because we haven't seen that silhouette yet. Yeah,
I think there's a good chance of that because, I mean, we do know that based on the Gal ship sheet that it's going to be a Pierce, and it's a medium-sized fighter, and that definitely looks like the shape of what Pierce ships have looked like thus far. So,
yeah. Look at Michael's comment. Well, you know, +1 to melee damage is what Michael's looking for.
Yeah, that'd be quite a strong passive.
We were looking at this image before, and I'm like, man, I mean, the neck has got to hold up that head and that long thing behind it. And then I was thinking, well, maybe it's it's from a planet that doesn't have much in the way of gravity, so it's not fighting that. But then you look at its ripped muscles, so it's got some kind of resistance that's giving it the ability to be in that kind of shape. Yeah, it's fascinating.
And what's interesting is seeing such an alien-looking creature with such a human-looking weapon, right?
Right.
Yeah. Good. 30-06 still holding up 500 years later.
Yeah. Out in ONI space.
It's a classic.
So, Jesse, did you have some information on the ships that are coming up too? That might be coming up. I thought you might have something on it.
So we kind of left off here, and we were just kind of doing some. We're just kind of speculating on what we thought the setup of your profile and what are we going to experience on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning for you guys. It'll be a little bit later in the afternoon for me here in Amsterdam. But then the next announcement is for Wednesday. So this is where essentially we're going to get the full version of the teaser trailer that we saw a while back. I mean, that teaser trailer is so short and it's so sexy to begin with. I figured I'd go ahead, since we have it loaded here, just to go ahead and play that real quick.
Yeah.
Legend has it that somewhere on the other side of space is a diamond the size of a planet. And everyone is out to find it. So I guess it all comes down to one thing. Who will find it first?
So yeah, that short version is supposedly the teaser for what we're about to see on Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the morning Eastern time. And so it'll be interesting. And there's just from the couple of tidbits that we got from that, some of the questions that have come up in the past was, are they metaphorically speaking about this planet the size of a diamond? Is it just a planet that happens to have a whole lot of resources? And then also, I'm curious, you guys saw that ship that was in there that took off. Like, what ship was that? Is that
a Hero?
You think that was the Hero?
I believe it was the Hero.
I don't know. I think it was something we haven't seen before. It looked like it was a bit too. It had too many, organic shapes to it. The Hero's kind of straight lined, and I think it might have been some variant of a Visas type ship. It
kind of had like 4 thrusters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know what is interesting is in that video they say who's going to find the diamond planet first, and that means less to me than who's going to control it first, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where the the history is going to be made on what, corporation or what alliance, gets hold of that and makes it their own, because that's really the end game, right? Who controls that diamond planet, as far as we can tell right now.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be set up in such a way that it's not going to be very easy to control it. I mean, unless you've got a whole fleet of, C-11s or, a couple of Titans.
Right.
Just sitting out there.
And is it metaphorical or is it real as well, right? So is it something that's truly made a diamond, or is it just a planet that has all the resources that are highly sought after, and it's in ×8 zones, so there's going to be a lot of it available.
Yeah. So that's supposedly what they're going to answer. They say here that if you wondered what the first cinematic teaser trailer was about, this grand reveal will answer many of your questions about the game and inspire you to take galactic destiny into your own hands. You can look forward to seeing the many aspects of the Star Atlas metaverse for the very first time. So strap yourself in before watching and prepare to be transported into an entirely new dimension. So yeah, they're really they're pumping this thing up. So it sounds like it's going to be jam packed with little nuggets of things that we've been wondering.
Well, I want to see what battle that alien was looking at, and how she was involved in it. Was she? It sometimes it looks like she gets a little bit angry. Sometimes it looks like she, her eyes look like she's given up. So is she seeing something destroyed that she likes, or has she destroyed something? I'm really curious to see about that part of the story.
Is she like one of the Avatar race where planets being raided?
Right. Yeah. Or her entire fleet, or I'm really curious. I hope they show that part of it. The other part, the rest of it doesn't have too much. What next? Obviously, we want to see the planet, but that part of the video, you want to know what happened.
Yeah. So that brings us to day 3 this week. Actually, it's not day 3. It's the third day of a release, but it's going to be Thursday, October 7th at 10 and 11 a.m. Eastern time, where there are going to be 2 ship drops. The first of which is going to most likely be the Pierce 4. Now, it hasn't been named as the Pierce 4. What they do tell us is that 2 brand new ships with never before seen design will be up for grabs in the depths of space at the Galactic Marketplace. It says the first ship is a slick, aggressive fighter ship of medium size with an end-to-end length of 39 meters. The second is an imposingly large and powerful bomber measuring an enviable 130 meters in length. So based on that description, again, while the names, design, pricing, and quantities for these ships will be revealed in the marketplace 24 hours before. So that means that on Wednesday, we will have the answer to what is being dropped on Thursday. But based on that limited description there, and the fact that there is a listing in the GAO for both of these, it looks like the Pierce F4 is the medium fighter that is also designated as rare. And then the Fimble Ecos Grenadier is the large bomber. That's the one that's going to be 130 meters. So 130 meters, just in kind of comparison, I don't remember exactly what the old Greca Thripid was, but 300 meters is what the Calico Guardian is. So this is a little bit shy of half of that length for the size of a bomber, which is pretty impressive.
That's sizable.
And that fighter is identically sized to the Calico, so they're both 39. So I would imagine the Calico is like beefier than a fighter would be.
Yeah.
So I imagine it will be like cheaper. It is higher on the list as well, so you can also imagine that. But if they add all the different like weapons and everything that you're going to need to a fighter, then it could also come out quite expensive if they price it that way. So no way to know yet, honestly.
Yeah. So just as a guess, I would say that since the OPOD was like what 2,300 something around there, and the Hero was 38, 36, 38 to open, 36. Okay. So that being the case, I would place that Pierce F4 somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3,000, maybe.
I think that's fair.
Reasonable.
And, yeah. And for the other one, for the bomber, I'm thinking like the Ogrica was like 8,800, just under 9,000, somewhere around there, and that's and so it's just sitting right below that. So maybe in the 5 to 7 range.
Yes, yeah, I'd say 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Especially because the Ogrica is a legendary, and then the Grenadier is only an epic.
Right.
Yeah. And we might have seen some leaks of that ship already, right? In action, we might have seen those somewhere, and if that's what we saw, it looked pretty awesome. The idea of a bomber, I was trying to understand what it would look like in a space game,
right?
And I think it looks pretty sharp. If what we saw was, this ship.
Indeed. So there you go. It says down at the bottom there that the community is welcome to make their predictions. Those are our predictions.
Well, if we were to think about the size of the fighter, and you said it's about a third of the size of a Guardian, is that what you said?
A little less than half.
Less than half
for the Grenadier, yeah.
And we know that the Calico Guardian is about the size of the Enterprise. So what other fighters? That's a pretty big fighting ship, right? That's not just a small ship that's going to come in and fly in and out. That's a ship that's meant to go in and do some serious damage.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and it's the first of any ship size that is designated for bombing. So it's not dogfights in the air. It's basically, hey, there's some land, there's some structures. Let's go wreak some havoc.
When do they bomb other ships? I mean, is that a ship that does a strafe on like a capital ship or an anomaly ship, and can it bomb a ship while in space? I mean, we already see that they have whole tanks. Why not something that's more offensive? That's like a whole bomber.
That's probably the case. I mean, at least from when we watch, epic space movies where you see something like, the Death Star or one of the big mega ships anyway. They're not moving very fast. They're not very agile. So it seems like they're chugging along through space at a pace that a bomber should be able to show up and do some damage.
Yeah. And then that ship, if it is a terrestrial bomber, does it have the ability to go down into terrestrial space? We kind of talked about that last week, the size of the ships that could and could not go down into terrestrial space.
Yeah.
And is it meant to bomb mines? And if so, when will we start seeing the defenses up from the ground? Is that something we're going to have to buy? Is that going to be a whole nother series of NFTs that we have to think about as we're building out our own empires?
That's the way that it is in O-Game. You do
Yeah.
have to tighten up your defenses with missile silos and things like that.
Yeah, the more you think about it, the scarier it is to spend all your cash just on land, because you're going to need everything else that comes with it. So it would be good to be able to estimate how much additional costs it would be per plot, for example. So we could price it before, because I know a lot of people are going to end up selling excess land. It might go really cheap for a while if it just if everyone just buys as much as they can.
Yeah, I'd say a healthy approach to any of these NFT gaming universes or metaverses are gonna be one where you'd want to spread yourself out. Maybe not get too heavy on ships unless you're gonna be that value, or you're gonna bring that value to a guild. And because if it was for land being more important, then wouldn't it come out first? We don't know. So ships are definitely what you're going to need to play the game right out the gate. And then with that, everything else falls into place. But yeah.
There's another consideration with land too. I think that if you go out and just buy a whole bunch of land and that's your strategy, just tons of land, that's probably a good recipe for going bankrupt. Because the game structure is set up in such a way that land is taxed, whether you're using it or not, and it's done so to encourage you to develop it so that the land can pay for itself.
Exactly.
So it discourages having land just sitting idle. And I don't want to get too far in this because we actually do have a section on land a little bit later here, which was the second blog post. But some definite things to discuss there for sure.
Foreclosures coming soon.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
One of the things that's I think is fair to say about the ships, and this is based on what Wagner said in what was Wagner chat before, what it is now, but the ship rarity as it looks right now is less about what it gives you in game and more about the returns that you might get from it
Right.
using missions. So, you know, I in my head I had the idea that okay, well, I can hold off on getting a thimble. I'll just get a cheaper freighter when it comes along. But the idea that some of these, you know, more rare ships are going to give you better returns has to be factored in, especially for people who are playing to earn versus just playing the game. Some
Yeah.
people, and maybe some people will want the cheaper ships because that's where their price point is. But I still think the pack light is the sleeper ship of what's out there right now.
Yeah. Especially as we learn more about the fact, you know, the XY coordinates for on all goods and services, they're going to need to be transported by someone.
Yep.
Yeah, especially because a lot of people aren't doing the research too, as well.
Yeah.
And I think just to touch on the research point, it's crucial when it comes to just anything you're investing in is to learn the most you can about it. Right? And when it comes to NFT gaming, there's so many layers that come to any particular metaverse in the game itself. So you know it would be best to ask as many questions and not feel like any question is stupid, as they say. But there's no question in this space that would be considered stupid because you're trying to look out for yourself and I guess the group that you're a part of. So the more people who learn about what's happening, the tighter, it will be more close knit as far as you know the community that you're a part of. You could provide a lot of value by educating yourselves.
Makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, on that note, we did get a bit more information from those blog posts. And because, just like you said, really you should be going through and educating yourself. Some of this may seem tedious because we are pulling directly from the blog post, but there's some nuggets of wisdom and information in there that's going to help you kind of plan your strategy. Here we are. So that brings us to land ownership, which is the second blog post that just came out early this morning, in fact. And what's interesting about that image, let me pull that image up, the larger version of it, because it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah. And it's got a number of things going on here. You've got these big, huge farming equipment things that look like they've got some type of propulsion so they can kind of float around. They're not just on wheels on the ground, so to speak. You've got some things in the air there. You've got this little, looks like a harvesting robot or something in the very forefront there in the bottom left corner. Some interesting things the whole way around, but it also places emphasis on the fact that, you know, what you do with your land isn't just about mining and that there's going to be some crop production, you know, to feed folks.
Yeah, one thing I didn't notice beforehand is that monitor in the top middle. It says next rain in 43 minutes.
43.52 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a nice little feature.
That's got a little cloud there.
Right. It's generating the cloud synthetically.
I wonder if that's a man-made rain or if it's a planetary system that just rains that often. It looks almost like a greenhouse.
Yeah, it's probably just a sprinkler system, honestly.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Well, I guess to that end, we knew there was going to be industry. And if they really get into the game where we now have cities where people have to be fed and they drink, it makes sense that they are working on a food and a drink system as well as far as resources and development.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think also that, you know, if you have a ship that is large enough that has onboard hydroponics, how much can you produce with that? And then can you continue to produce food with that, even if your ship is, docked at spaceport? You know, are you able to continue to produce, resources from within your ship if you have the means to do that? I'm curious how that plays out.
Yeah, this is definitely there's a trend of more of this type of, I guess, leak or picture sharing that we've seen in the past. We're starting to see less ships and more of what the worlds look like. We saw what looked like a library or something last week. We see this week. We've also seen some other pictures that are terrestrial based to give exposure of what life on a planet would look like. So this game gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more we talk about it.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention about this is the tag that came with it. It is called the Star Atlas Land Management Terraforming Player Controlled and Owned Assets. So basically, just the use of the word terraforming makes me happy because if you could find like a barren planet, basically, if it has good enough resources, you could turn it into your own paradise, which sounds great to me, honestly.
Right.
All the green in this picture and all the robots makes it look quite automated, which I feel like it. Food, if it's going to be a big part of the game, then it's going to be very just logistical. Like you have it or you don't have it, and you need to have enough for the journey you're going to go to. So if you're going to go across the universe, you need like enough fuel, food, and weapons, pretty much. So a lot to think about.
Well, that makes sense from a strategy perspective, right? So it's not just about the weapons; it's also about the morale of your groups. So if there's something to do with the better food you create, the more morale and the more productivity you get, the strategy component or the resource strategy component of this game gets so much more complex than even I already thought it was.
And then that peels back even more layers. Like if I wanted to do this, let's say I have land, and as Fancy was suggesting, like on a barren planet. Do I buy an NFT or do I buy these individual things? Can I buy this whole hangar and place it down on my land? Do I buy these individual parts and things that I see here from some other player or some other player corporation that manufactured these? I'm just curious at some point how granular it will be, or is this all one NFT project thing and we're just looking at the functioning parts within?
Right. I'm thinking that it might be that you're gonna have minimal work that's put into it, but for the managing, it's gonna be automated, like Fancy mentioned, because Wagner did mention before how he didn't want any one thing to be that tedious of a job to do, where there's no fun in doing that task. Whether when it came to mining or maybe harvesting, that's why we see a lot of automation here. And if you caught right in between the large green carry farm. On the left and the right, there's two little humans, or I don't know what the race might be, shining in that light. So that's a little to scale there for how large this whole system is at play here for harvesting and growing food. So maybe the structure would be there as an NFT, but to think you'd have to build this whole structure on the outside and then focus on what's going to happen inside, it's a daunting task.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a bit like all of them factory games like Factorio. It would be a really big process to build it up and all get it like started, and you would have like a team of people who would fix all the robots if they broke down, for example, all these things that could occur just to make it more intuitive. But yeah.
For sure.
And I think the idea that the game could become a bunch of button clicking on timers doesn't sound appealing to me. So I hope they do automate a lot of this stuff. I'd rather be involved with my avatar playing the game than looking at a screen and clicking the appropriate timer when it becomes ungrayed.
I think that they will, because if they don't, then it will become a game of bots.
Mm-hmm.
And so to make it playable, then, just have some of that stuff be automated and make it so that, much of the things that you need to do are things that, exclude bots for the most part. And then that just makes it so that you don't have a bot world for a game, which wouldn't be as fun, which is going to also be interesting. The fact that we're going to be in this world. Let's say you're on your ship at some point. This is far off in the world of 3D. When the full game is released, but if you have some that are NPC crew, and then all of a sudden you can have someone from your guild or someone that you invite onto your ship and they pop into that role now, kind of reminds me of, in the Matrix, whenever you see one of the guys pop into one of the forms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that actually. Yeah.
All right, let's see here. So basically what it's telling us is that, it's giving us a little backstory on kind of like why they went this way. It says, in any MMO world, land has always been an important resource. In the vast intergalactic Star Atlas metaverse, because of blockchain integration, land is much more than something to be farmed or a place to build your barracks. For explorers, land is what allows you to get ready for space. For landowners and producers, land is what will help you build your empire. So that's interesting. Just again, we're just dealing with clues here. But they're trying to give us an idea that, as you might just think of it in terms of mining and farming, but apparently this is, where you're setting up shop, whether it's R&D and, just the things that help you get ready for launching to go out. Maybe it's where you build, a spaceport as you're building within the atmosphere. But then again, the question becomes is what things would you use on the actual terrestrial layer versus an actual space station?
It's interesting as we've talked about, the business opportunities in a space station and how there's the different decks. But now I'm starting to question, is there going to be the same business opportunities on the ground, right? As far as people to have a shop or whatnot.
Yeah.
But the what I'm getting out of that description there is something that we kind of talked about is it sounds like there's going to be a need to put food on your ship before you go. It's not just about bullets. It's not just about fuel. But it seems like you're going to have to stage your ship with a number of resources, which makes sense. And this is kind of, if I read between the lines, that's what this is saying.
Like that. We get light years per gallon. Call it tow truck. Yeah.
Actually, I have a curious thing. Seeing as we need the player, or now it's saying that we need food, what would happen if you're in deep space and then your crew die from hunger? And then now it's just a floating wreck, not even a floating wreck, but a full ship just ready to be taken by a salvage ship. Just be like, oh, look, that's nice X5 that I just got for free because the crew just died. The player died. Now he's on somewhere else in the faction.
Well, wasn't it in Firefly where the Reavers, they saved the bodies of their dead on their ship to eat them? Isn't that what they did? So you just save the bodies of our dead.
It goes on here to talk about land to say that each planet is divided into land parcels, and each parcel is represented as an on-chain NFT, which records the specifics of each parcel, its size, its borders, its location, current ownership, and more. And I have searched for it, but I could have sworn at some point I had heard that there was like a fixed number of potential parcels per planet, something like 64. I don't know where I pulled that.
That's what
it is. It is 64.
Max. They said 64 max. So I don't think every planet will have 64, but I think it's up to 64.
When you think about that, I mean, that would seem like these are either some small planets or some really big land parcels.
Yeah. Well, hopefully really big land parcels. I mean, the idea, well, it's hard. Do you expand out or do you expand down? I guess that's the question I would have, something we just don't know yet.
I mean, if you sliced up Earth into 64 land parcels, that's a big spread.
Yeah, it's big.
I think it also takes into consideration planetoids, so like moons, bigger asteroids. Maybe that's where it's coming down, where it's like maybe you have an asteroid field and it only holds 10 versus a planet that can hold 64, moon maybe 32, and it just breaks it down that way.
Yeah. It goes a bit further talking about all buildings are built on something, whether it's a space station or a stable upper crust of a planet or asteroid. So again, it sounds like they will be building on asteroids. Mm-hmm. Owning land itself opens the player up to the possibilities of mining and farming, for example, and to defend the territory. There are many technical aspects about the land, but here are some of the main highlights. Land is owned, and it can also be lost. This goes back to what we're talking about, taxes on land. If you can't pay them, they go into foreclosure. Right. Star Atlas utilizes innovative land value tax, LVT, to prevent flipping, as well as to incentivize users to make use of their land parcels. Players can sell land, buy land, collect taxes, or use it as collateral for loans. Land parcels can be acquired in primary markets through an auction or in secondary markets where landowners can sell their land parcel in the exchange for Atlas. So there's a bit to unpack here, guys.
Yeah.
Starting with the fact that land can be lost. So what do you guys think about the idea that you might have paid some money for land and that becomes your way of life in Star Atlas, but it's at risk at some point for some reason, even if it's not in the safe zone, because if you don't pay your taxes on it somehow, or you took a loan out on it and someone just happened to be like, "Oh yeah, remember those goods that start your business? Well, I'm going to help you default on your loans so your land goes up for auction."
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone taking a loan out on their deep space, mining project. That would be foolish, right? You get wiped out. And honestly, think about the reputation of somebody who could wipe out those land claims out in deep space. That somebody has leveraged. Hold on, what did he say? Who is this? I think he said an entire planet being mortgaged. Did he take that out?
Oh.
Right there, right? So let's say you go leverage on your entire
That's what
planet.
I'm talking about.
I mean, talk about go big or go home. But,
Right.
And then somebody comes in with their anomaly ship and just blows it to smithereens, and now maybe you're out on a leverage position of a couple $1 million. I mean, the amount of risk that could be created by this game financially is huge.
And on that note, it's as we enter this new era of blockchain gaming, where decisions actually matter. It's not just like a game where you can rage quit. You actually, you have to think about what you're doing. You have to make rational choices and decisions, and you have to treat it like a genuine business, because for all intent and purposes, it is a business.
Yep.
And and so you really have to approach it from that angle. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't, and that find themselves in over their head with choices where other people are showing up with the skills to be able to run a business effectively. It's going to be an interesting playing field.
Yeah.
There's already what you can do already is put up as collateral your NFTs to borrow against them. So the equity in these NFTs are there, and just like with these general NFT projects, and you're going to be probably able to do everything because it's a simulation. Right, so we're going to be able to be doing these things as we are already just in the crypto space outside of game metaverses, and we'll just have to see how it unfolds, because there's a lot of people who mess up in real life with their finances. They're not financially literate, and and it's gonna be sad. But again, if you're taking out a loan against your deep space, whatever property you have, or assets you have, and then it gets destroyed, you didn't put that much thought into it.
Yeah.
Punjab brings up a really good question here.
Mm-hmm.
If your land becomes territory, it falls into the territory of another faction as these lines move, what happens? I mean, can you still farm it? And are you going to be taxed on it and pay a different faction? Any thoughts on that?
I have to wonder if it remains your land. That's not how it works in the real world. If you an example of that is, Crimea being contested between Russia and Ukraine. It's like, whose land is that? Russia says, well, it's ours. But the rest of the world says, nope, that belongs to Ukraine.
Yeah.
So whose land does it actually become if another faction now is controlling that territory?
Well,
another level of. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I'm thinking if these are NFTs, right, and it's going to be placed somewhere, I guess you have a decision to make at that point. To get up and leave, break down, which might take some time, or it could be an instant transaction on Solana network, which that wouldn't be realistic to what you do in the real world. But for the purposes of the game, if you would have an ultimatum where you could join the faction or pay higher taxes to stay there, when your allegiance is to a different faction. It could go many ways. I see. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to guess and put my finger on it, but more taxes for sure, because that's what would be demanded by the faction leader.
Well, it goes back to that regional DAO piece, right? So can a regional DAO tax different people differently? Or is it one tax all the way across? And this would be a great example of how does that play in? And I haven't seen anything, and again, we don't know much about the game. We're all kind of just guessing here, but I haven't seen anything that demonstrates the cross-faction impacts like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that both of you raise a good question in my mind about factions, because we've been told thus far that choose a faction because that is your faction. But why? I mean, there would be instances, and again, if we were thinking of factions in the real world that way, that there should be some reason or some process that you could actually change factions.
Yeah.
under certain circumstances. You just might find out that there's opportunity in a different guild that's in a different faction. Territories shift and change, and so now you're like, hey, it's more I'm going to be out of business unless I change factions. So now I'm going to change factions to keep things going. So there's considerations like that we'll probably run into at some point.
And that has a lot of historical precedent as well, right? I mean, there's many stories, even from a religious perspective, where you had if one religion took over your territory, you better convert or else.
Right.
And that's gone a couple different ways over our history, but I think it creates another level of complexity for guilds about where do you put your medium space, roots down then, right? Because if it's in a spot that could be on the line and constantly in flux, then you're managing all of that while you're doing the other stuff that you just want to do to make money.
Yeah. And even speaking of factions, this big thing that's still in my mind as well is like, what does that layout look like? If we're thinking in terms of a three-dimensional space, and let's say that each of those factions was like a sphere sitting in that space, how are they stacked next to each other? And then what do we consider to be deep space versus, like the space that's right up and next to the factions? How are the factions? Do they bump up against each other? Is there deep space between the factions? What does that look like in a three-dimensional space?
Yeah, it seems to me that you're gonna have your safe space, which will be a combination of all three, and then as I would believe it to be, you'll have three vast reaches of space where those factions will start out, and then they expand over time. And I think you will see some that are butted up right against each other. I hope that interplay is there because it will add to the tension of the game, right? Where there are some faction boundaries that can be crossed, and that maybe there's an advantage to being along that boundary from a resource perspective, and maybe there's a disadvantage. Seems like there would be a trading advantage to have your factions relatively close in medium space, because you wouldn't have to trade. It wouldn't cost so much money.
So one of the other bullets here talks about players can sell land, buy land, collect taxes, and use it for collateral. So if you can collect taxes for your land, but yet you as a landowner are also paying taxes, the question becomes is like, how many people do you need to offset that? How much business do you need at a most basic level to offset your own cost of just existing and owning that land? That's one interesting consideration. And then also it says here the land parcels can be acquired in the primary market through an auction. So here we are back to that auction thing. And every time I hear auction, it's kind of like one of those numbers like, oh man, we see what FOMO does to every project out there. Can you imagine just like the first piece of land goes on sale and the bidding just goes ridiculously high? I'm curious to see what we're going to experience. And I guess land sales are probably not going to be till towards the end of the year. But what is that going to look like at an auction? The same thing we were kind of wondering like with names, but even with land, it's going to be more significant because that means like, do you just let the whales get in there and just bid stuff up and then eventually they get a big chunk of it and then they're out? Does that mean that someone is going to pay a premium if they want to get land in a precise location where they want it and get it stacked next to each other so they control a region? What is that going to look like?
From a tax perspective, I'm wondering if you can be taxed out of your property, right? So if you're in a regional DAO and they tax you so heavily that you can't even collect enough taxes or resources to be able to pay on it, and then you end up owning that land value tax. I hope there's some level of cap from like a regional DAO where it can only be like 5% or 10%, whatever is the appropriate amount. Because I think if I go into a piece of property and I want to develop it and extract value from it, I don't want 75% tax on my earnings.
Yeah.
That's where Polis comes in.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
Your vote counts.
But you can only, so to make that Polis work, you have to have Polis staked. Yep. And we're about to get into what that lowest tier of that looks like. So actually, I'll save that because we're actually about to get into governance next and talk about what that actually will look like. But I do think it's going to be interesting. There is going to be auctions. Any other thoughts here before we?
Auctions bothers me. It's a game of whales, in my opinion. It's really about if they do an auction, I hope it's something like, okay, everybody within 300 meters of this planet or this landmass can auction for it. But if it's a broadcast across the entire faction or the entire game,
Yeah.
then that's just inviting whales to come in and just trounce people, and that's
Yeah.
not power to the people, which is what they say is kind of the tagline, right?
And with that said, just on that note, if there is to be a whale and they consume up, a good percentage of land or whatever the case may be, the value proposition is not just having the land. It's the land. It's like you grew a tree, right? You bought the seeds, but you didn't plant any of the seeds. So you have the seeds, which are somewhat valuable on at some point in time, but to have the structure and the manpower or the people who are going to take care of the land if you were to buy land and grow food on it. So you could flip if the sales of land are going to be a certain amount outside of the auction, and everyone who knows what's going on, like even with the recent ship sales, right? There was no prices released, and then everyone overbid beforehand. It lost money, or you regretted doing it, and then they corrected it after the fact. So with land coming into play, I'm thinking everyone should know what the price is going to be. And then whoever the whales are trying to flip for a 10x, who's going to buy that? Everyone knows that it was supposed to be this price, and they're not going to pay so much more than what it actually was. So now you got this whale with all this land. He's going to have to sell it back at whatever, unless everyone FOMOs in and the price just gradually increases over time. But, these guys, these whales with the land in particular, are not going to have any more money coming in than maybe the small percentage of sales from slowly selling the land plots. So it would behoove them to build a guild or a team or have someone that's going to manage all these assets, because they are in-game assets and they need to be active to produce revenue streams.
Yeah. What I would have liked to have seen, something like, hey, for everyone that was a part of the poster process, you can get X number of land plots at this price. And then other people that have been a part of the Discord, and kind of roll out like that. Because again, getting back to the whole thing, power to the people, if you don't figure out a way to distribute the wealth, and wealth can definitely be described as land ownership in this game to start with, then you're installing dictators from the start. And that takes away some of the flavor of the game, of what the metaverse as a whole should be expanding to be. So hopefully it's not just this bloody auction of whoever shows up with the biggest bucks.
And if that happens over time through attrition, wealth concentrates, that shows up in society as well. And if that happens over time within the game, fine, that's what it is. But if there is a competitive advantage for the whales, if you will, right at the outset, then I agree. It doesn't have the same sense of fairness. And I don't want to say equity, because I know that's kind of a buzzword, but you want a fair starting line, and you want the ability to get to the finish point through your own resources. But if there's people who are 200 yards ahead of you in the race, then you're always behind.
It'd be kind of like starting the game of Monopoly and going, here, you get all the hotels, now let's play.
Here's Boardwalk.
And with all the experience that the team has, right, with the little hiccups here and there, and what they can learn from the space in general, I don't think they're going to come out the gates as a failure when it comes to these things that we're talking about, with the potential of whales coming in and just taking advantage of everything. And now all the assets are gone in the hands of these types of people who technically become these dictators if they're going to start and build in the game themselves. So
and we had go ahead, Ultra.
No, I just wanted to answer Punjab's question about the fringe space in the 3 zones. So technically, you can lose your land in all 3 zones. It's just harder to lose it in the safe zone. The only way you can lose it in the safe zone is if you get taxed out and then it's foreclosed, then that's gone, or you just sell it. The medium zone, you can just get wrecked. So they can't steal it, but they can keep destroying your land over and over again until you can't pay the taxes anymore. So you'll just sell it, or it'll get foreclosed. And then the only one they can take it from is the deep zone. That's where the heavy PvP, they'll wreck everything. They can come in, destroy it once, and then just take your land. So that's where the 3 zones are. But the safest is the safe zone. But you can technically lose your land claims in all 3 if just depending on the circumstance. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to answer that.
Oh, no, that's good, man. And then I think Apex has it right, and this is how I look at any game, that new players should have the opportunity to make their way from the starting point all the way to the top. We know this is a game driven by value, and there is something behind pay to play and pay to earn. However, if we follow the American dream way, right? The smallest person can do anything they want to if they put their mind to it and find the right avenue to get there. And I think that's going to be the same opportunity in Star Atlas as well. I hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does bring us to where that blog article transitions into talking about regional DAOs and voting rights. And it says, while building your production empire, expect there to be political struggles both within the entirety of Star Atlas as well as your regional DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. To help deal with this, Star Atlas has introduced a mechanism whereby landowners can vote in their regional DAO to help better govern their region of the map. For example, landowners in a specific region might put forward a DAO proposal to adjust taxation on certain activities. Voting will be done by staking Polis, the game's governance token. Now, I think I'll add this second part to it, which says regional, which is the low-level DAOs, can vote to change, add, or abolish policies. Military, homeland security, external relations, as well as adjust the budget to better suit the region's needs. Owning land is a requirement to the vote, and each regional DAO vote will affect your relations with other regions, either making things easier, such as importing cheaper supplies from builders, or more difficult by voting to impose a high tax on imports. It's all up to you. So, folks, to me, this is at the heart of what you are going to see become a dominant force of gameplay within the game. And so this is just lightly beginning to touch on the mechanics of things at that level. Now, the other side of that too is we know that there's going to be people, and that's the beauty of the metaverse. There's going to be people that, you know what, not concerned about all this. I'm a blue collar miner. I'm just getting my mine on each day. And then after that, I'm going to the galactic pub to complain about the high tax rate, but that's the extent of how they're engaging. And then other people, they're just a club owner or someone's just hanging out in the club and they never even leave the planet. So it's going to be interesting. And then there's going to be this whole political level where there's going to be people that are, look, I've got property here that gives me a vote. And so I'm also going to be staking. But where does that vote and that staking actually take place? And that's what we're going to see another couple slides here on. But what are your guys' initial thoughts on, DAOs and voting and land?
This is like a whole nother game. I mean, this is a whole nother game that you could just focus exclusively on this and keep yourself out of ships, out of anything else. If you've got the polis and maybe the land to support it, then it becomes a whole political game. And I think at first glance, and this might be showing some of my political side, but philosophically, we run the risk of tyranny of the majority, right? Where, all these people are like, oh, this is going to help me in my pocket. But, this 20% over here, it's really going to screw them over. And you're going to see the 100% democracy work towards screwing people over. It's going to be interesting to see how it's straight politics.
Yeah,
is what it's turning into.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ray.
Okay, yeah. So just on the surface level, it's just like land is going to play a huge part into alongside Polis. So there's that extra utility for Polis where it's just like you marry it with an in-game asset, and the value there is evident. So and depending on the faction you choose and how well it does, and the strength of it, I guess will determine, I guess, the taxes. It's really going to be a decision you make or the guild that you have makes. So even though this is a regional DAO, I guess your own separate DAOs are going to have to coincide with what's going to be required in the game, depending on what the quantity of land that your guild has. And it's going to be interesting to see how guilds change and reshape, I guess, with the new knowledge that's coming out over time. And that's why in previous episodes we said, a DAO, alliances, the creation of it, the speed at which you need it, if you do at all, right, depending on what they're going to provide us in game, whether it's for renting ships, aka scholarships, for lack of better terms, if you want to call it something else, or when it comes to a DAO itself, right? So there's still a lot of time and plenty time to just continue to educate yourselves and structure a plan. So that's my thoughts.
Something that comes to mind for me is they talk here about Atlas has introduced a mechanism whereby landowners can vote in their regional DAO. Okay, so we know you have to own land to be able to vote, and you also have to stake polis into the DAO. Well, the question that I have now is, can I just own one piece of land and stake tons into that DAO? And does that give me the vote that I need to have a controlling vote? Or is it also based on, is there weight carried on how much land you have? And is there weight based on how developed that land is within that region? I would think that these should be factors. Otherwise, you could just have a whale come in, just give me one piece of land, and I'm just going to fill the DAO here with my polis so that I get the vote on everything and I have the controlling vote.
See, to your point there, that is the most surface level concern I think they most likely thought through, because now going with the dictatorship situation, where if one person just buys everything and the whales are here just to play and to control the politics, if this is going to be a major part of the game, I highly doubt that they're not going to make it so where people can just buy land. There's going to be standards or variables that you need to meet, I guess, for your vote, whether you whether you have a lot of polis or not, or a lot of land or not. That's my opinion. Maybe it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and then every vote counts for you as an individual, no matter how much land you have. But the amount of in-game revenue that you can earn is going to be greater, obviously, because you have more land, and it's being productive. It's a productive asset. That's operating 24/7. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I was just saying, it's not going to be like Tropico 6 in space.
This is a place where I think, there's a lot of guilds doing their own guild DAOs. And then we've got this regional DAO. And I think this is a place where there's going to be some conflict or some friction between your guild DAOs and the regional DAOs, because if you're putting all your assets into a guild DAO, you might be taking away your ability to help influence from a polis side, right?
Great
so
point.
If you've got a guild and you're buying all these ships and farming out ships, well, that money might be better suited in the long term through tax revenue by putting it into polis and helping your guild control politically.
Right.
This is alpha information here, a hot off the press from Rome.
And that's all that raises the question: can a guild DAO own land itself? And if so, then can it also stake guild polis in the regional DAO to be able to have a guild vote within the region? Yeah, that's another interesting thing. So as we're talking about DAOs, it was important to kind of pull this out of the, I believe it was in the economic paper, because this kind of shows you a top down from a DAO structure. So at the very top, you could be staking in Star Atlas DAO, which means that that's going to control monetary policy, treasury management, and game-wide decisions throughout all of Star Atlas. But then you can bring it down to the faction level and have for example, the ONI Faction DAO and what happens within the faction as a whole. But then there's regional DAOs, and we don't yet know how many regional DAOs there are, because they use the example here of 4, 3, and 3. So we don't know how many regions are within a faction yet. Mm-hmm. So we can see that with the faction wide, as you got faction tax policies. By the way, everyone's taxing you the whole way through, it seems like.
Even in the
spend over, it won't hurt that much.
Faction warfare coordination, which is an interesting consideration. It's like, if you got the peaceful guilds, like, I don't want to go to war. You're still paying for it, buddy.
That's too damn bad.
Yeah.
Access to end game content. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it brings up a good point. So the previous slide and this slide both talked about using the DAO to talk about homeland defense. So is there going to be an automated system of defense that you can vote on and pay for through your DAO, where you have like these NPC ships that will fly through and help protect your assets? I think that will take away some of the requirement of some guilds or some groups to kind of fulfill that role.
Yeah.
But it seems like this is more than just collecting taxes. There's decisions that the DAOs make that support the different level, faction level, regional level. There's more to it than just drawing in money.
Yep. So we can see there that that's at the different factors for taxation, warfare coordination, all those sort of things, end game content, and even development targets. If you decide that maybe a Dyson sphere is actually something that has to be voted on, that it could even be built. We don't know. And maybe that's something that can even be funded by a faction or funded by a region. But if we look down at the regional level, all of those regions down there, the regions and the DAOs there have an impact on taxation incentives, local monetary incentives, and planetary restrictions. So this is the lowest form of the DAO here, but yet there's levels that go beyond this, that go from the Star Atlas to the faction to the regional DAOs. And to take a look at that, I've actually got this thing that I created here, which shows, here it shows you that even below the regions, you still have star systems, which we don't know how many planets are in a star system. Has anyone seen mention of that anywhere?
I haven't, no.
And then down below the star system, you have planets. And as we discussed earlier, a planet can have up to 64 land parcels. But none of this region here, nothing in the star systems, nothing in the planet, nothing at the parcel level is DAO related. Mm-hmm. So if we go back there and we're looking at those regions, everything we saw from the planetary system down fits within one of these regions under a faction. So there's a whole lot of layers to what's going on. But from a voting and staking standpoint, it stops here. The lowest level is the region. And so when they do go to vote, they're essentially voting on what happens within this area. Mm-hmm. And so if we look at the governance here, the section, it says the map of Star Atlas is subdivided into regions, which in turn contain star systems and planets. Regional, low-level DAOs control specialization of star systems. So that means at a voting level in the region, they can say that we are going to specialize in this. And so we're going to give tax incentives and things like that. And they can also impose restrictions by adjusting tax on certain activities. Voters in the regional DAO are required to own property. We already mentioned that in order to be eligible for voting. So imagine whoever has, regardless if you own a whole planet, regardless if you own a whole star system, whoever has controlling vote within that regional DAO can dictate taxation and what is restricted and what is incentivized within your region that you're in.
It's interesting that I didn't see the link to actual specialization, and I think that again adds more complexity to it because you might be somebody who wants to specialize in warfare or specialize in stealth tech. So I think there's some great opportunities there, even for those guilds that want to specialize, to get very, very focused on specialization and control geography that supports the things that they're trying to do.
Right. And then we also got to remember, too, that there's also the incentive for staking in that regional DAO because the taxes that it receives from the planets and the star systems are things that you're going to be compensated for as a part of that staking process. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some incentives in there for that.
Yeah, this really puts everything on its head when it comes to, I think, everyone's plans beforehand. There's going to be a lot more thought that's going to be taking place and a lot more decision making on part of members of the other guilds based off of what is already structured there. So keep your eyes open, and I wouldn't say make any concrete decisions yet.
Well, I wonder if the regional DAO, I wonder if it's a reflection of how much polis is being staked from a certain geography. So like, let's say a guild takes over a planetary system and they're all staking their polis. Does that then become the regional DAO, right, for a certain part of the space? I don't see how they do it by cutting clear lines because, space is, it's not a clear cut lines. It's going to be places or planetary systems of different spaces. So I'm hoping it's a reflection of concentration of polis within a geography, because I think that will help guilds really establish themselves in certain parts of the, safe space and deep space.
Yeah. I think it would be a combination of the two, local and larger, or all of them, perhaps. Perhaps it's just percentages of each. So if you own a planet, then you have a percentage, say, in the universe, like you said, Manjo. But that could also translate down to what universe you're in, just like that graph you showed. Yeah.
I would like to see it be such that each one carries a weight. So, for example, if you own a lot of land, that carries a certain factor towards the vote. If you've staked a lot of polis, that carries a factor
Right.
within the vote. If the land that you own is been developed, highly developed, like we see, like you have different degrees of mining. You know how you have the different tiers. So if you continue to build up your land, and all of a sudden it becomes a tier 5 piece of land, because of that development, that it carries additional weight within the voting of the DAO. So I would hope that there's some kind of a balance between the factors of all of those things that weigh in for how much significance you have with the vote.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
The last image I've got here just kind of combines the two, which basically just shows from the top down, you've got those three tiers of governance. You know, from Star Atlas to the factions to the regions. And then below that, over on the right, you've got star systems, planets, all the way down to your land parcel. So it's a pretty complex system, and it's really going to be fascinating to see how this whole thing unfolds and what becomes of it as it evolves. It's going to be exciting.
You know, I'm wondering how much power the leader of each faction will be. I think I recall something that said that there will be a specific leader, a player character leader of each DAO, based on the polis and maybe some level of elections. And, you know, if you get 3 people elected into those 3 different factions, are they going to work together or are they going to work against each other? You know, it's really going to set the stage for whether this is a more peaceful metaverse or a more warlike metaverse. And I think we'll see conflict at all levels, honestly. But my hope is that we see some tension at those 3 levels and that we don't see this utopian ideal of space. That I want to see gritty and dark and warlike and fighting for resources. I don't want to see Star Trek.
And some propaganda news channels.
Yeah, we get enough of that already in real life.
I think we'll have those here.
Yeah.
In today's news in the Ooster faction.
Yeah. I mean, already putting out propaganda and fake news just to kind of get an advantage, you know. It'd be cool if you could sell fake data. You know, we know we have the data runners. It'd be awesome if you could implement like a fake data into the system.
Right. Any other thoughts? Maybe we can jump to some comments. That's really all of the content that covers pretty much everything that was in those 2 blog posts.
So
anything else you want to add?
My enthusiasm and my excitement levels are through the roof.
Oh,
So, I would like to add, I was thinking about this. With all the communication that's taking place amongst guilds and their leaders, and all of the things that I've learned personally, this is my own opinions. It's just that a lot of guilds and their leaders came out guns blazing, with a lot of rhetoric that was more of on the offense of things. But I mentioned in other episodes as well that there's such a larger scale ecosystem that's going to take place here, and we just covered mainly, you know, the politics for the most part, and it's just going to be fantastic to see the mindsets and the egos or the personalities and the characteristics of humans that are going into the metaverse, and how those are going to be portrayed with in the metaverse itself of Star Atlas. You know,
well, it's interesting you say that, Ray. So do you think, and this is open to the group, do you think the guilds that have a single leader, you know, that dominant decision maker, are going to be more successful, or people who have like such like Rome, we have a council where it's a group decisions, but then you also have guilds who intend to lead by full democracy, which I think is not the best way to do it, but you know, that's what they're going to do. Which ones do you guys think will work out the best?
Well, I think a single individual can only go so far. You know, the adage of you travel farther together, right? So you always want a conscious observer and a second of opinion when it comes to anything in life. It's just, you know, for your own benefit, in my opinion. Just like if you go to the doctor, you know, the doctor is one doctor of many doctors who have a background and a different understanding of things. Everyone has a different viewpoint, and it's just healthier that way. And it just makes sense to do that. You know, when it comes to a life or death situation, you'll be surprised that the most timid, quiet person is gonna, you know, come out guns blazing as well. So it's not like you always have to have, you know, your package, you know, out and hanging around over your shoulder to you know, for dominance and territorial purposes, because that's just baked into the game itself via the politics and how it all works with burning of NFTs. So you know, I do my squats, I deadlift, I bench press too, but we're in the metaverse now.
Yeah. Another factor that I think is going to play a significant role is we're dealing with a semi-virtual economy that has real-world implications. And as such, I think it's going to lend towards the guilds that have real-world business experience, that have actually built real businesses or have access to that type of experience. And I know where we stand.
Yeah. A real-world experience is going to make a big difference in this game. And as we were talking about the DAOs, I was thinking, do we need somebody who has like tax experience or actuarial experience, who really kind of understands how some of this stuff works and what are the appropriate rates? I mean, you'll figure that out over time, but as somebody who likes to min-max games from the outset, why wait? If you got somebody who says, no, I think you should tax at 2% instead of 3% because this will be the positive impact on your productivity. That type of stuff matters, right?
Or dramatically reduce to stimulate growth, and then have it. So, I mean, and with the plans that because of that growth, you'll see those returns later, rather than just gouging people who can say at some point, we don't know what the process looks like, but they can pick up their marbles and go to a different sandbox. Somewhere else. You know?
Or the actual sandbox.
Right. Well, I would love to see some guilds pick up you know, real world economic systems just to see how they work and try to follow them to the letter of the economic system to see how it plays out. So take, you know, socialism or communism into it, or take full, you know, entrepreneurship and wide open, no regulation, no rules into it, and really see how it shows up in the metaverse. The unfortunate thing is human nature is what it is, and I think it's going to turn out the same way in game as it would out of game.
And then there's also game mechanics too that may place bottlenecks on how you know the economy can play out.
It's going to be an interesting journey.
Indeed. Any the comments here?
Yeah, we can get to comments now. We have a.
Well, I tend to disagree with this because it seems to me the biggest governments with the biggest bureaucracies tend to be the most corrupt.
That is the corruption.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to avoid inserting too much of my personal political ideals here, but I'm down with the government. Is what I say.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of trial and error, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think that what we're going to see a lot of, and it's a natural thing. As gamers, what do we do as gamers? We look to game the system. We look for the hacks. We look for the things that we can do until the developer's like, oh man, got to plug that hole. We can, but that's also real life too. You look for the easiest path between A and B that requires the least amount of resources, the least amount of effort. And sometimes those are hacks, and then eventually those get plugged in, and then we have to figure out some other approach. So yeah, it's going to be whatever we can, whatever can be done is what people will do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And going back into what people will do that is stupid, Mega brings up a great point here is, you know, there's going to be people who see some sort of opportunity here and are willing to take risks to put real world collateral, you know, life-changing collateral on the line. And then do something where they might lose that. So I think that it's fair to say, and I think all of us agree, that you only invest what you can afford to lose. I mean, no one should be in this game with stuff that is there negatively impacting their life, in my opinion. I mean, that's foolish. And for me, what I put invest is play money or some degree of investment money, but I consider it high risk investment money. It's not a sure thing.
Yeah, it is absolutely high risk. I mean, the things that we're talking about is still mostly theory crafting. And honestly, even for every game developer that's out there right now, because these worlds are not built. These are ideas about what they would like to envision unfolding over a period of time. So a person going in and thinking that all of this is going to work, this is an experiment. And so, yeah, it kind of needs to be treated as such. Only what you can risk to part with without too much harm in your world.
Yeah.
Someone here mentioned that their concern is estimate return on ships. If I buy a $9,000 Agrica, how long would it take to pay off the initial cost? So this is an interesting thing. There's no answer to this for real, but what is impressive to me is that Star Atlas is probably one of the only projects where the leadership actively acknowledges that these are investments. And I don't remember what show it was on, but at my own point, I was saying myself that I would like to see my return within a year. It's a high risk investment, so therefore I would like to see a high enough return that I felt that would come back within that time. And oddly enough, I did hear at some point in an interview, Michael say something similar to that. And while there is no guarantee, there is no set time. I like the idea that at least they have a milestone in their mind of what they're trying to weave the mechanics into being.
Well said.
And, they definitely can't guarantee anything, but I like the thinking behind how they're approaching it.
And it's a reflection of your time as well, right? So if you buy a $10,000 ship and don't do anything with it, well, good luck getting your money back. But if you're in there playing, and we've all played MMOs in our past, and all of us have put in some serious time when we had less complex lives. So if you're putting in 20 hours a day or 16 hours a day on a $10,000 ship, I would hope that you would see a strong return. And if you think about this through the lens of DeFi, because this really is DeFi through the lens of a video game, there is some amazing returns happening in DeFi right now. And even the people who are staking Polis and Atlas are making some pretty good returns on their money. And I think you're going to see this show up in the game as well. There's going to be some solid returns, but you got to do the work. It's not just something where you click a button and walk away.
Yeah, to that point, I've had talks with individuals in a pretty large guild that's out there on the back end, and his concern, as well as the event I went to for Axie Infinity, where I was preaching about Star Atlas, the networking event more or less, and there was a lot of like everyone's 50-50. Right? Is it a rug pull? Is it not? And it simply comes down to the understanding and education, like with most things. So once that happens, you can formulate your own opinion and see how it wouldn't be just a rug pull. These are games, these are blue chip companies that are going to be here for the long run, right, with their own ebbs and flows. And but when it comes to the ship assets and the cost, and then what you could make, right, what you could make relative to what the price was when you bought it, why would a team? Okay, so the concern was if these Titan ships for the auction are going to be 5 million starting, right? Or these commander ships are hundreds of thousands, right? If you only had a ship and you were out there with mining claims on the outer rim, you don't have land. You're just mining, right? You're going to be making 8x in returns. So eventually or very soon, I guess after the fact, when the game is out, you'll be able to do a calculation and see, depending on what the prices are of Atlas, and if you're going to extract value from the system to convert it back into Ethereum or Sol or whatever you're going to do, eventually, how long it would take to do that. Just like we talk about Gala nodes and how much Gala we're getting compared to the price. So all of it's almost like it's an investment, like Wagner said, and you're building a business, and the upfront cost and the overhead is what it is for now. But I don't have a doubt that it's all gonna be to scale, and you're gonna have a relative return that's gonna look pretty good. But like Banjo mentioned and Jess, you're gonna have to put in some work. It's just like every other investment. You got to put in the work.
Yeah. Punjab brings up a good question about the reinvesting versus the profit taking, and we know that Wagner has said multiple times that the goal is that they hope people reinvest and compound their value in the game itself. But there are people who are also doing this to extract value from the game also. And I think for different people, when you start pulling and taking profits is going to be different. Now, some people will take profits by building stuff and selling it. Maybe they'll take a portion of that. Some people will flip Polis and Atlas and take profits there. I think it really depends on how you intend to play the game. I think personally, I'm looking to have fun and also extract profits at some point. So at the end of the day, none of us spends tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars just to play a game, right? There's got to be some profit that you're pulling out of there or compounding in a pretty big way.
Right. A lot of these games, from my experience in Axie, which is where it all started last year, was that the people who get involved, no matter your timeline, as we're still in alpha in everything, no matter what you think, right? You're gonna be the beneficiary, right? You're gonna be the one who benefits by holding and taking part and doing these types of strategies: compounding, reinvesting, restaking, right? Spread, diversifying, like as the space grows. So you might want to extract the 100,000 you put in for a ship because you want it back in USD, but just with your business, you wouldn't get a return on anything because you have to get clients, or you have to have customers come in and actually, cover the cost of everything you invested first, and then you'd be in profit. So it's just the basics of it all, and the time that's needed alongside of it to get your return back. And that's going to ultimately fall on your own shoulders as an individual if you have a ship, even if you're a part of a guild. Because you'll be taxed in the game and maybe from the guild itself that you're part of. And if you're not going to contribute by working for the Atlas token in the game in any way you want, then you're going to potentially lose your land if you had land, or get kicked out of the DAO if you can't afford the taxes, or lose faction territory. And it's the dynamics.
I think the idea that the challenge, with DeFi, when you compound your growth, you create more value and you can extract that way. The challenge here is when you're compounding into a game, you're usually growing your assets. You're either buying more assets or you're building the level of your assets. So it's not as easy to extract profit from something that you might have to sell to get the profit. So you're always going to be living at what you're producing is where you can pull your profit from. Whereas, straight DeFi, it's generating profit and there's no, asset you need to sell or divest from to pull profit. So I think pulling profits won't be as easy as if you just did straight DeFi.
Right. And with that, so what makes it even harder is the incentives that these games add to staking Polis. Like if there's a great reward, you're gonna less likely pull out and then get an earlier return than not, and keep it in there so it could compound. So like Axis staking with Axie Infinity, there's a lot of people who got an airdrop, but they released the airdrop with the staking rewards and the ability to stake. So now you're gonna, I have an option of pulling it out, but then it doesn't do anything depending on where you're gonna put it, or you stake it for a 3-digit percent return. And with Polis, it would be the same situation across the board with any games where you want to highly incentivize people to keep the value that they're putting in the game initially to stay in there. And I think Star Atlas is going to be able to do that.
Very good, gents. Well, we're almost nearing the top of the second hour. It's usually about how long we go here. And again, we're gearing up for a pretty exciting week. It's kind of like the culmination of what we've been waiting for, the doors to open to this project, since we've all taken note of it, participated in the GAO and have been a part of the Discord and all of the town halls, and it's like finally happening now. We have some great things to look forward to here in the coming days. And that means we're going to have a fantastic show next week because we're going to have lots to talk about. We're going to have that trailer. We've got the registration process, and we've got the ship sale. So, yeah. Any closing thoughts from you guys?
Well, we also have a guest next week about a different property or a different IP, right? So we have at least a short period of time where we'll be hearing about another NFT game that's coming out. But I'm excited to hear about what's coming this week in Star Atlas. That's really where my mind is. There's a lot of good stuff coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll see how the week plays out. And if you're interested at all in what we're talking about and want to be a part of the greater good of the metaverse of Star Atlas, go ahead and we'll drop the link. I saw Banjo do that earlier. To join Rome, there's an application that you would fill out to become a nomad. And then from there, you can just be as active as you'd like, ask as many questions as you'd like. And once the application is filled out, we'll review it and we'll get back to you. And we do promotions ever so often, more often than we used to, every week after the show here. Cheers to anyone who's joining, and we'll see you and to continue the conversation in the Discord.
That's it. And with that, the show is a wrap, and we'll see you here, same time, same channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell so that you're notified. And again, appreciate all of you and all of your comments here. We'll see you in the Discord. Cheers.
Bye.
Later, guys.